Welcome to BlackUSA.News Morning Show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, all my friends out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege and honor of being the host of the BlackUSA.News Morning Show. I am so incredibly grateful to be here today. Beyond the normal, I'm grateful I woke up in the morning, because that's a place you should probably always start. But I'm so incredibly grateful because I have an opportunity to interview today the Associate Administrator for the Small Business Administration. And we're going to talk a lot about what the Biden-Harris administration is doing to really kind of change the future and reallocate resources to small businesses, particularly businesses in minority communities, and for our perspective, particularly those in Black communities. It's been, they launched it earlier this month, and we'll get into it a lot more later. But it is going to be a really great opportunity for all the entrepreneurs out there to really get a sense of what's happening next and how to prepare. Because a lot of times we find out about the stuff that happened after it happened. That's not a really good place to be. All right, let's see. I'm sorry, got a little something in my throat. Yesterday's show was amazing. Had an opportunity to talk to Darnell Wharton of Baltimore 365. Oh my goodness, we had a wonderful time talking about authentic engagement in community. A lot of times when organizations and entities come into our communities and with the best of intentions, they really genuinely want to help. They come in with a level of hubris. They come in with, let me tell you what you guys need to do. Let me fix this for you because you clearly need my help. And not recognizing that we missed the opportunity to really delve into the community's practical genius, to really understand who they are and what they need. Not making it so much about us, but really focusing in on them, because there are times where, guess what? The community actually knows what it needs. They live this day in, day out. And so sometimes those of us with great intentions and a couple of degrees, we forget that we need to be partners with the community, because that's the only way we're going to resolve any of the issues. Like, this has to be a partnership. We have to do it together, because we've all tried individually. And guess what? It got us here. If we want to get to the next place, we got to do something different. So that was awesome. I'm looking forward to the next time he comes in. We're going to talk about, and he also he also told me that he's going to talk to Erica Bridgeford and see if he can get her to come out on the show. So that'd be dope. I told you guys, me and Crazy Horse, the producer, Crazy Horse Morgan, we know good people. We know amazing people. And so we're going to keep bringing them to you. Last night, Donnie Glover had an opportunity to talk to Michael Steele. I like Michael Steele. He's a really good guy. And just to have a conversation and reflect on how politics, this kind of insanity and insanity politics that we're dealing with now, where it's okay to just lie. For some of the people in our political spectrum, that is not only has that become their stock in trade, what is it? It's no longer a bug. It's a feature now. And talked a lot about what we can do as citizens to kind of turn that around and really engage and protect ourselves, really, from the types of misinformation and things like that pop up around. And so that was a great show. If you didn't get a chance to see it, it's available on BlackUSA.News on our Facebook page, and as well on our YouTube channel, or Donnie Glover's YouTube channel. All right, tonight, Sister Biz with Tamara and Nicole. That's always a good time. And tomorrow, right here on the morning show, we're going to have Tamika Givens of Tamika Givens Real Estate. She's going to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the real estate market, and how, if you actually are holding on to some property, what you might need to think about as you determine how to move forward with it. All right, woo-hoo. We got a lot of stuff, and big shout out to Lisa Morgan of Thompson Router, new employee there. Great looking forward to you and watching all the great things you're doing. And a shout out to Trinity AME Zion Church in Washington, D.C. Just want to say a big shout out to big people doing big things in the community. All right, now we got all the preliminary out the way. Now all the housekeeping is out the way. We get to the meat of the subject today. I have an opportunity to introduce you to Miss Bibi Hidalgo, who currently serves as the Associate Administrator for the Office of Government Contracting and Business Development at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Now, sometimes we get stuck on titles and we don't understand, like, Vice President of moving things from one desk to another. And be like, well, what do you actually do for a living? I need you to understand the office that she's working in. She's working in the office that focuses on how money gets out of the federal government into people's hands. And how do you find vendors? These are the policies, these are the decisions that set the context about the opportunity for wealth, opportunity to get a contract. So not even do you make it once you get there? She is on the front end of it, setting up the context for it all. So I wanted to stop and make sure that we understood that where we're getting the information from today, because all everything ain't equal. In this role, she oversees and reviews federal policies for small business contractors hoping to work with the federal government. Specifically, her office works with women-owned small businesses, veteran-owned small businesses, socially disadvantaged firms, hubs-owned firms, and 8A firms. We're going to talk a little bit about those categories and how they work, but we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the reforms. And so I know we have a hard stop. So let's get this started, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to bring to you Bibi Hidalgo. Hello, how are you doing? And welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you, Mr. Honeybaloo. And I'm always so proud and pleased to be with the city of Baltimore, the Baltimore City residents on an early morning.
Yeah.
I lived in Baltimore for many years.
Oh, really?
And I saw that you are a Greater Baltimore Urban League graduate. And I also worked for Mr. J. Howard Henderson.
Oh, okay. So, okay, we good now. Everything else we can talk about is fine. Like you said, Jay Howard, then we're okay. Let's keep it pushing now. We got a whole different relationship going on. Oh, I love it. He is one of the kind of tried and true mentors, especially in the Black community in Baltimore. Well, actually, it's throughout the Mid-Atlantic area, just really focusing in on making sure that the next generation, and he's a generation ahead, so he was covering a couple generations back, and just a really, really great guy. Oh, I love the way this started. Okay, come on, let's go.
He is one of my greatest mentors, and he's the one who encouraged me to join the Obama administration. Right when President Obama was elected, and helped to steward that process. So I'm forever grateful to him for everything I learned. Before that, I worked. What was that?
I used to work for him when he was the president of the Urban League, the Baltimore Urban League. Ran the entrepreneurship center he started. Like, it was the back of the church, empty space.
Yeah.
And he was like, we need to help and bring some business in. And he called me because I'd worked with their young professionals, and we opened up from a store, extra space in the back of the church, and in 3 years created an award-winning entrepreneurship center.
Really? I'd love to go visit.
That was his leadership. That was all his leadership. He did it because he understood that until as a community, we started investing more heavily in our education toward business, we would always be chasing. So yeah.
So I used to take my son all the time with me when I'd go to meet with him, and to this day, my son remembers the Mrs. Fields cookies that he would give. I don't know if he still would hand out those cookies, but he always had some extras there for the kids.
Great guy.
There's a lot of this goes back to all of this work. Essentially, goes back to my time working for Mr. Henderson, and of course, I worked at Citizens Planning and Housing Association before that, CPHA, where we worked to get an inclusionary zoning law passed. That was from 2005 to 2007. So working with AFSCME Council 67, 1199 SEIU, NAACP at the time, that was Marvin Doc Cheatham. Yeah, and the Urban League, of course. Yeah. So I'd love to be back with Baltimore and talking about this really important subject. As you mentioned, we just announced last month some significant procurement reforms.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is about where the money goes. And we often call ourselves the revenue team at SBA because we're about ultimately doing business, making money. You know, we have our lending side, but ultimately we have the business side. And that's what businesses are in business for. How do you make revenue? If you don't have access to that and you're just getting access to capital, what are you left with?
Okay, you about to take us again on a whole different talk about business preparation. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit in the context of the reforms, but that is a space where there is a lot of misinformation in many of the communities, and that's why I thought the reforms that you all outlined, they make so much sense, and I was so glad that you decided to come and really help our audience understand the practical implications. Because a lot of times they see the news article and it's like, oh, that means I'll be able to get a contract. It's like, whoa, slow down a little bit. We need to and really talk about and again, one of the other parts of the reform is how you all are digging into helping develop the technical capacity so that the businesses can scale into the opportunity. I'm sorry, this is you go ahead and talk about this. I'm excited
no, I love it.
About what we're doing, but this is your thing. I apologize. I get excited about stuff. Go ahead.
You're going to be our official spokesperson. I can see that. I appreciate that because sometimes it can get so technical and wonky. And so with you today, helping to parse that and make it more accessible, I think would be enormously helpful to the Baltimore community and around the country.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, you know, when we started in the administration, and actually going back to transition team when I was on the Biden-Harris transition team, and I'm hearing from leaders around the United States, do something about this issue of contract bundling. I mean, you know, it was going on for some time, but then it was really turbocharged under the previous administration to the point where the agencies were scored better by how much bundling they were doing. And so that created a disincentive. So here they had competing priorities. Do I meet the small business goals or do I bundle, you know, in the name of efficiencies?
Right.
And so we knew that was one of the first issues that we needed to tackle. And this was actually an issue really near and dear to the heart of Administrator Isabella Guzman, who saw this coming down the pike years ago. And immediately we started working very closely with the National Economic Council, Domestic Policy Council. Those are two big policy-making councils within the White House, and the Office of Management and Budget. And then you've got your big 7 federal contracting agencies. So these 7 represent 90% of all federal spend. Now we contract $560 billion every single year. That money is there. It's not contingent on legislation. It's not contingent on a specific like Jobs Act, or it's always there. And we often say, let's be really purposeful and mindful about how we spend that.
Right.
Clearly, we also need new buckets of funds for important programs. But apart from that, we've got that. We've got that every single year. We are the biggest purchaser in the United States and the world, the biggest single purchaser.
Right. And I really want people to understand part of this, because a lot of times as citizens and consumers, we look at the government as a separate entity, a different player.
Right.
But it's important for me, as we're talking especially about the allocation of resources, that we remember that we are the government. It is not just the employees of the government that are the government, but the government is all of us together, whether we actually have a federal ID to go with it or just, hey, I voted or whatever. This is about how we allocate the resources that we all put together. And so, again, as you are parsing through the needs for these reforms, it aligns very clearly with this is us again. And we have been, especially with the previous administration, not going to talk too much about that. That's a different show. That's a different show. But well, the allocation of resources, they talk about socialism and use these things as boogie concepts to scare people, but it's the same damn thing. You take money out of the big pot that we all have and you redirect it, except they were redirecting it in the short end of the population span. They were redirecting our communal wealth to people who already had wealth.
Yes.
And I talk about a lot of times when we look at these people who are benefiting for those types of programs, it's like financial hoarders. It's like why do you need 7 yachts, especially if you're in a state that's landlocked? Like, come on. But again, that's a separate show. I know that's not what you're here for, but it sets the context, I think, for a lot of why the reforms that you all are talking about are critically important, because businesses are designed to make money and do business. The government should be designed to take care of everyone.
Yep. And it's interesting you put it that way in terms of hoarding, because when at one point the administrator and I were talking with another great Urban League hero, Mark Morial,
Mark.
Also a mentor. And he said, I ran a city. He was mayor of New Orleans. I ran a city. I know those things never work, because what happens is after you consolidate all the contracts among supposedly the best performer, they'll lower their prices to get in, and they have the ability to do so. But then once they've priced everybody out of the market, they raise their prices. So are we really creating efficiencies, or are we creating monopolies? And that's what the federal government needs.
Do that word. Say that word again. Say that word one more time. We are creating what instead?
Potentially monopolies.
Exactly.
Right. And so that
to win the capitalist game, that's what you actually want, is a monopoly. Like, that's how you win capitalism. Interestingly, you win capitalism by creating social. It's a separate issue, but yeah.
So that's where it's incumbent upon us as a federal government, and I like to use the term watchtower we have a whole team of people in my office who monitor federal contracts that are going out. And if they see that a small business or minority-owned business can do the work, they'll call that out, and I call them the watchtowers. Good. Well, it's the same thing with the federal government. We need to be the watchtower for things like that, because otherwise, what are our values as a country? If we start heading in that direction. And I'll tell you this, it's about learning from history. It was then Senator Truman, going back 7 decades, who warned this could be an issue. Fascinating. Wow. Yeah. Wow. He said this could be an issue, that we cluster all this opportunity because we provide the most amount of opportunity with the biggest elites. And that's when he got the Armed Services Procurement Act passed in 1943.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize that was the context of that. Okay.
Yes. 1943. So the fact that here we were repeating history all over, that's what we got to be always mindful of, because we don't want to be that country, and we got to protect ourselves from becoming that kind of country.
And I got to be honest, at a certain point, I had this conversation with someone on the show a little while ago. I've been a little more cautious about what we do and don't want to be, because, or not that, the more this is not who we are. Because I felt about it, like, the more we keep saying this is not who we are, like, if it's not who you are, you say it maybe once or twice a lifetime, but we're like every other month, we're like, no, that's not who we are. No, that's not who we are. I think to your point, we have an aspiration of who we want to be. And I think that, again, to your point, we have always aspired to be the better version of the America that we could be. The problem is that, again, to your point, and again, I know that wasn't yours, that's Truman. I'm not, I'm giving them, but the people, their goal is to win business. Their goal is that, and left up to them to make the rules. I don't play games with 7-year-olds who get to make the rules. I just won't. It's not a good look. I will lose every time by definition. And sometimes, especially for people in the Black community trying to work with the federal government, it feels like that. It's like, okay, oh, so you have this program and we get to show up and we fill out paperwork, and it's like, oh, but that program is in that fiscal year under this program in this census tract. And it's like, well, and then we can look at it like, but it says that in the rules. You mean the 85-page application? Yeah, I'm sure it did say that someplace. And so again, that's why like the reforms that you all are talking about aren't just, because I love the fact that you all have been able to take policy level ideas and really talk about how they integrate into real people's lives. I mean, imagine that, policy impacting real people. You guys are just crazy.
I love this. You're gonna have to go on the road with us from now on.
So how do you talked about how you got in there and how you all are focused and making sure. Let's talk about some of the practical applications of it. Yeah. So one of the things that you all have, go ahead, go with it.
Well, so I will say one of the things we realized, and this was during under President Obama. At the time, I staffed Valerie Jarrett at the White House around small and minority business contracting, and we had all the cabinet level members like DepSec and above come and report on a quarterly basis what they were doing to move the needle on
I remember this. Oh my God, I forgot about that. I remember reading something about this. Okay, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, President Obama saw very clearly, this is the way we create meaningful jobs, salary jobs with benefits, where you can actually create wealth for generations.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of jobs that we need to be most mindful of. And, but I will tell you this, the most important lesson we learned then, because a lot of times we'll focus on making sure the businesses are aware of the opportunities, making sure they get technical assistance.
Right.
But we had this aha moment where it's really about, yes, the supply, what we need to do everything we can to support the supply, but it's really about creating demand. Are we creating the right demand, and are we incentivizing our 40,000 buyers to go out and find those businesses? Because that's what we really have a lot of power to do.
That changes.
You could have every statute. That's exactly right. You could have every statute, you could have every rule, you can have every regulation, but there are always loopholes.
Yes.
At the end of the day, is that buyer really incentivized to go partner with a firm they've never met, with a business owner they haven't had the opportunity to work with? What will get them to do that, to go out and make those new connections, create and broaden their networks? That takes some calibration, which we have the power to do. And so back then, we put it into performance evaluations of the senior executive buyers, the program managers, as well as acquisition. Now, we couldn't get all 5 goals in back then. It was kind of a range. So that was the 1.0 version. We were able to meet the 23% overall small business goal established by Congress, which we hadn't met in close to a decade. Okay. Now, this is version, probably even like more 4.0, 5.0, where we got all 5 goals, the small disadvantaged business goal, the women-owned goal, the veteran, into the performance evaluation. So right now you have all 24 of the cabinet and other agencies putting it into the performance evaluations of our senior executive program managers across the federal government. So that's one thing. That's how we start aligning our incentives with statute. Now, here's another, and this is one of the things we are really most proud about. And it's taken a long process to make sure everybody was in agreement, from White House counsel to Department of Justice to Department of Defense. And Secretary Buttigieg and his team at Transportation, we're like, let's get the data out there. We need to establish.
That was big too. That was big.
A baseline. That's right. Yeah. Because otherwise we look like we're doing really well. We're at 10%, about 10% small disadvantaged business contracting. So for the first time in United States history, we disaggregated and published that data. How is the Black business community really performing in government contracting, and the Latino community, and the lower 48 tribes, which are very disadvantaged, and Asian American firms.
If you got a time to come back for that show, we talk about a lot of the problems and equity, and how equity is not, there is, honestly, uh, economically, there is no equity in America. It is, and not just among racial and ethnic categories, but also even within white categories. Wealth is concentrated. They're the same people in the same families. A lot of times, there are opportunities below them, but by and large, they're, it's a it's honest. And why wouldn't it be? Like, why wouldn't I want my kids to have what I had? Like, we are the policies, and I, again, love what you all are doing, because you all recognize that policies need to be in place and incentives need to be in place, because the baseline is so low, and we need to make sure that people are on the same page deliberately, not just I hope we end up in the same place and we're going in the right direction, but really hold a level of accountability. We had
Yeah.
a comment about how the opportunities are shared with the communities, but there's another thing that in your description about how you all did is something I want to make sure people understand. Because a lot of people have not worked for government before, or a large agency where they, these things make sense. They're looking for the outcome. Like, okay,
Right.
yeah, you did a data disaggregation. I'm gonna go Google that
Yeah.
later, but like, so what does this data disaggregation do? And so I want to make sure people understand that the stuff that you all are talking about, the fundamental work you did, one, hadn't been done before in a meaningful way. So that, I think that's something we really need to anchor into. But two, it informs the conversation. So we don't have, like we talked, like I mentioned before, there are people in politics now who will just lie, absolutely unadulteratedly, without
Yeah.
condition, caveat, or conscience. But what you all have done is that you all have made it more difficult for them to navigate in that space. Why? Because you have data. Okay, go ahead. So where did we don't have a problem with getting money and stuff like that to individuals, or getting it.
Right.
The data says yes. So explain to me what you're talking about. And so
That's
I
exactly
want,
right.
I want people to understand how important that is.
That's, yeah, because we are a little bit over 10% small disadvantaged business contracting. But within that, the reality is Black-owned businesses are only getting 1.67% of all federal contracts.
Say that again. Let
1.67%.
them hear that number again.
1.67% of federal contracts are going to Black-owned businesses, even though they're about 9% of the businesses in the United States. This is the first time ever in history we have put that data out there. We had it, 10 years ago and before that, and have never been able to put it out. And this time we said enough is enough. We're not going to improve unless we know we have transparency and we know exactly where we need to go. So 1.8% go to Latino-owned businesses, even though Latino firms have 12.8% of the businesses in the United States.
Right.
So there is a lot of inequity, and we have a lot of work to do. So apart from performance evaluations, the first thing we talked about was unbundling these contracts and making them more accessible. So one of the things we did is made sure that about 30,000 more of the minority and socially, economically disadvantaged businesses would have access to this whole rung of opportunity in the tens of billions of dollars that they were cut out from. So that was step number one, where they could go back and compete for those contracts now that were basically taken away from them.
Okay. So that's step one.
So that was step one. Then two, performance evaluations. Get all the goals into performance evaluations. But see, we could get lost there if we stopped right there, because then you can go back and do more contracts with the disadvantaged businesses that are already in the pipeline and our majority are not Black-owned, majority are not Latino-owned. So that was step two, performance eval. And then step three is, let's make sure we all know as a baseline where we stand with Black-owned business contracting, Latino, Asian, tribal. So as we are increasing the opportunities, we're making sure that we are creating more equity across the racial and ethnic groups. So that was three.
That's wonderful. No, I'm sorry. I'm like, because everything you're saying is like, and it's because it's so funny. It's kind of like the, crosswalks now. Like crosswalks now, we're just like, okay, well, that it doesn't make sense not to have one. but there was a lot of controversy over crosswalks when they first came out. So it's I love the fact that like this to me feels a little like crosswalks. It's kind of like I'm hoping we get to a point where everybody's just like, why wouldn't we just talk about this deaggregated data or disaggregated data and understanding how all of these things are systemized? So you got it. If the issues are systemic, then you have to develop a systemic solution. And so, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's how we approached fair housing. You know, we have the data on mortgages.
Right.
Why haven't we done it on actually opportunity, you know, on business, especially when minorities, I think, disproportionately become business owners? Because when you hit that glass ceiling in corporate America or even government, what options do you have? You're an executive, you're seasoned, you know your stuff. What options when you're stuck at this level, but to go and start your own business? So that's where we have like unbelievable talent across the United States. Some of the best of the best. Like you said, the practical genius. I hope I can start using that. I don't know if that's
you know what, but make sure like every third time you use it, you give me a shout out, because that's my licensing agreement on that one.
Third time, okay, we got it. It's a deal.
but so I want to shift a little bit because we've been getting several comments, and I'm going to tell you kind of my perception on federal contracting. You know, in my personal business, I've done some work with federal agencies in the Department of Defense, and I've helped other of my clients start working on their 8A applications and really kind of secure contracts.
And I saw you did some consulting for SBDC as well. So
SBDC. Yeah. Oh, that was fun. I had a good old time doing that. That was great. But what I have realized, particularly about federal contracting, is that it is a very niche and specialized field. And these opportunities, while they're expanding for Black businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, these are not opportunities for everybody.
Right.
And I want to kind of talk about what types of organizations are best fit to try to pursue federal contracts. And hopefully, with that information, will help some of our smaller businesses, you know, solopreneurs, individuals who are aspiring to federal contracts, help them understand how they need to make some modifications, how they may need to do some planning, some investment, and some resources they need to pull together so that they can be prepared. You're not talking about, hey, let's open up a business. I mean, let's open up a federal contractor to, you know, like, hey, my name is William and I make cupcakes and I just started doing this like 2 months ago, but my cupcakes are great and everybody says they're awesome, so I should get a government contract to give military people, or you all feed cupcakes to somebody, so where did I get my contract from? But that's the way that a lot of people approach it, because they don't know any better.
Yeah, you need to be pretty well established. You need to have a book of business already. You need to pretty much, you've got a business model and a proven product, whether it's professional, you know, whether it's a service, whether it's an actual widget. And not that you've got to be in the millions, no, but you've got to know and that takes a while. As a business owner, former business owner myself, you know, my brother and I.
Right, you and your brother.
Yeah, both worked for President Obama. He managed private sector engagement for President Obama, and I managed the contracting strategy. We started our own business. It took us at least 3 years to try to figure out what the heck we were offering. You know?
Absolutely.
And it was painful. It was tough. And we would have been in no position to contract at that time with the federal government. We needed to know what our offerings were, what our price points were, you know, where the demand in the market was. So once you've figured that out and you're in a place where you've got some steady revenue, that could be a good time, you know, to then go for an 8A designation. And as you know, and as you consulted people, it's not easy to get an 8A.
No. Like that paperwork is a workout by itself. Like you end up in shape. Like the only times I've ever had, like, well, not an 8-pack, more like a 2.5-pack, was when I was working on paperwork back in those parts of my life.
Yeah. So that program, 8A, is part of my portfolio. We have a whole team of dedicated professionals that review the applications and determine eligibility. We're also right now working to, you know, make sure that the application the flow of it is a little bit better. It's always going to be rigorous because we need to ensure that the firms that are most, that are eligible, and this goes back to, again, it always comes back to Baltimore. Congressman Perrin Mitchell this was his vision of creating the 8A program.
Absolutely.
And
changed the entire game.
It was a total game changer. I mean, I can't tell you how many businesses, especially during the Obama administration, they were like, this is where some of the first Black-owned business millionaires were created in the United States, was through
from the federal contracting space. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
So you fell into a booby trap. So you did this to yourself. Right. It's not even my fault. It's my fault. We got 10 minutes and you fell into the booby trap. So so this is, so I want to shift a little bit. When I know you have a hard stop. So after you talk, I'm going to make sure that they have the links to get more information and how to get access. But you talked about your experience as an entrepreneur and that ability to become ready. Yeah. And so one of the things I want, if you could just a few minutes talk about that as an entrepreneur, because you're a policy expert, technically proficient, blah, blah, blah. I mean, some of the people that we work with, they're not. And so I've learned that the personal, professional, emotional, mental, spiritual are all strands that need to be braided together in your world as an entrepreneur. You don't get you don't have the luxury of work-life balance because it's all your life. Yeah. And so how did you navigate the excitement, on one hand, the excitement and the belief in yourself that you can do it, but as you start recognizing, well, wait a minute, maybe I don't know as much as or maybe it needs a lot more. How do you navigate that emotional space?
Yeah. I mean, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's not for the faint of heart. And it takes a real toll, personally, professionally, mentally. Yeah, you have flexibility. And as a single mom, that was one of the best reasons to do that, because I could make sure that I was there to pick up my son from school. And that meant the world to me. But it's certainly, I mean, right now I know I'm getting a paycheck every 2 weeks and I've got health benefits.
Man, listen.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, at the point where being in charge mostly sucks. Being in charge mostly sucks because you are responsible for everything, not just making sure you get your paycheck every 2 weeks, but there are literally other people whose lives and whose families' lives are contingent on your decision making. No pressure, by the way.
Holidays, making sure they get paid, especially Thanksgiving, Christmas. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my brother and I had to forego paying ourselves to make sure that we always paid our team. That's like first and foremost. Most of the time, I will tell you, we didn't have health insurance. Of those 6 years in business, most of the time we did not have health insurance, and that's tough. Especially minority-owned firms. We have not only the responsibility of ourselves and our families, but oftentimes our parents, where it's that, that squeeze that they talk about, that middle.
Yep, the sandwich,
we help all 5 of us kids. And as you probably saw, my brother passed away at the start of the pandemic, at the age of 41, which has been the worst tragedy of our lives. But, my mother also passed away from heart disease and diabetes. And that was almost 3.5 years ago now. So we're in a tough spot in this country as children of immigrants, Black business community. We're in a really, really tough spot. And that's why, we've got to, as a federal government and under this President Biden, make sure that we are really on top of our game when it comes to contracting. Because as I often say, you get a contract from the United States government, whether it's defense, energy, homeland security, and that's, again, a game changer. That opens up doors with the private sector all across the country. So that said, as far as like getting into the space where you can contract with the federal government, we have a lot of resources, as you know, with like our resource partners, the small business development centers across the country. We have 68 field offices also across the United States. Those are direct SBA employees, really talented directors. I've had the opportunity now to visit with many of them from Puerto Rico to Alaska. And And then we also have women-owned business centers. For example,
Yep.
we just recently awarded a major contract to the U.S. Black Chambers to manage the Women Business Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the president announced that he was going to
Yeah.
increase the small disadvantaged business goal to 15%. So we have our resource partners. Apart from that, we have crafted really extensive legislation for, yes, the Build Back Better plan. God, I hope it passes. We'll see.
Oh,
It wasn't looking too
man,
good before the
you,
holidays, but there's still hope. So I want
wow.
to tell you a little bit about that because this is
Okay.
really important.
Okay.
So on my team, we hired actually the district at the time the district director of the Washington D.C. office, who worked with over 1,000 8A firms during his time there, Mr. Antonio Das. He's now the deputy in our office. He created a pilot the business academy at Bowie State University here in Maryland, where it was focused.
Oh yeah, the entrepreneurship institute in Bowie.
Yeah. That was Mr. Das, and so one of the ways we were able to recruit him to our team to headquarters is we talked about, is there a way we can bring that to scale across the United States? So we crafted really extensive legislation for the Build Back Better plan. At the outset, it was about $4 billion, where we would invest in historically Black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions, tribal as well, across the United States, who wanted to create business development academies specific to federal contracting. Because we realized in order for the businesses to get to a place where they have that confidence almost from the outset to partner with the federal government, we need to start much earlier. We want to be able to build that into the curriculum of HBCUs. So not only would it be a center where they're supporting existing businesses, but our hope then was that it would become part of the curriculum of the universities itself. So as you have this incredible pipeline of talent coming to Morgan State, or Spelman, anywhere in the country where you've got a number of Black, Latino, and other minority-owned businesses, that the students themselves are learning about the federal space. The students have incredible ideas. They're becoming engineers. They're becoming scientists. They have a lot, and they will have a lot to offer to the United States. But by building it into the curriculum, and that's part of where, if the plan passes, that would be one of the requirements, so that the professors themselves are teaching the students in the name of entrepreneurship about federal contracting, where most of the businesses in this country
will be engaged. So, okay, you playing with my emotions a lot today, and I'm going to talk to my therapist about the emotional upheavals that you have provided in me, and I don't know whether this has been cathartic or traumatizing, but like. Which you talk about the confidence to really be in a position to do business with the federal government, but I love the fact that you're not just stopping with the confidence, you're also talking about helping them scale up their competence. Because I've seen a couple of people come to the federal government with, yes, we're going to come and save the federal government with our new widget, and it's like, oh, honey, I saw your plan. It's not you're not going to do this. And so I like the fact that you're combining those things to make sure that actually it sounds like you're trying to make sure their confidence is based on their competence.
Right. Exactly. Because they have the competence. That's not a doubt. Whenever people say, oh, we can't find the firms or they don't have the capacity. No. We don't buy that. I know
that's both. Yeah.
They're there.
You ain't call me. Oh, and because one of the things we do here is shameless self-promotion. Because if you're not going to tell your story or ask for your opportunity, then who else is going to do it for you? Right. I love what you're talking about integrating this into the HBCU curricula and things like that. So I'm going to tell you one of the things I was working on, have been working on. We've created a partner with an organization called Fosterpreneur. Shout out to Erica Myers. And what we've created is a trauma-informed entrepreneurship education training program. Because what we realize, especially dealing with minority communities, many times entrepreneurship is involuntary. It's more like entrepreneurship. Like I am lost my job, or I
Yep.
need more money to survive. And it's not part of a larger plan. Some of it transitions from side hustle. So anything you want to do, especially if you come into Baltimore, let me know. More than happy to help try to integrate those concepts of how do we deal, because a lot of times we focus on providing the technical assistance, but recognizing that some of the problems may be mental, emotional, and spiritual. Because
I love the
I've
way
been
you say that. I mean, it was, again, I can't emphasize enough how tough it was. And I'm glad I've had that opportunity to know that
right.
struggle. And for the businesses that succeed and have made it, I met so many during the Obama administration, many who were leading fundraising across the United States for the president, and to hear their stories from growing up in the projects in Chicago to becoming one of the top federal contractors for the NSA, in IT cybersecurity is just remarkable. There's no question.
It is.
The talent is
And
there.
one of the other parts about specifically, so one of the things I like about the SBA's resources, now I absolutely understand why the mental, emotional, and spiritual part are not part of the bailiwick that you all have. Because I got to be honest, depending on which administration's in power at the time, I don't know if I want you to be involved in my mental, emotional, and spiritual health. But on the business side, and I got to tell you, like I tell my clients all the time, start at the SBA website. Like, the business plan, I would get them a lot of times to start at the SBA website to start developing their business plan. And we take that document and help them build their business system. Because and getting them to understand kind of what you're talking about, like there's an entire language, there's an entire set of resources between PTAC, SCORE, and even the structure of the the mentorship program and the 8A program. It's like all of these resources are there. And I think what you're talking about now sounds like increasing the opportunity on the back end. So as people move through those resources and access those services and develop their businesses, there is something, this is the next level. This isn't like, hey, I'm a startup, let me jump out here and get a federal contract. I advise clients, like if you're looking for federal contracts, you're talking about scaling. Like that's when you, in your business development, that's when you should start thinking about federal contracts. Even state contracts or local contracts, you might be able to knock out earlier on in your business life cycle because of relationships you may have. But it sounds like you all are providing the opportunity. So after we get through all that, there's a reward for it. Like going through PTAC training program, hiring a lawyer, hiring a consultant, getting your books in order. And I know some people have been very frustrated by doing all the stuff and getting 8A certified. And it's like, all right, where's the government contract? And it's like, and so making sure, because I try to make sure that our audience understands what's for whom. Not saying that if you're a startup and things like that, don't go for it, but make sure you level set your expectations, because this is for scale. This ain't for like, let's jump out on here and get it.
That's right. And so one of the things to start, like you said, going to the website, we have and I don't know why we always refer to these programs with a statute letter and number, but we're working on rebranding right now. So we have our 7J technical assistance. We've got our partners in 7J that provide 7J technical training, so they can see that in the government contracting part of our SBA website, the resources we have there. We have it in the fiscal year 22 budget. If that ever passes, we're going to scale up quite significantly to make sure we reach more, again, even minority serving institutions around the United States. Now, if Build Back Better passes at some point, that'll be, right now we're hovering around potentially $1 billion that we will disseminate from my office around the country to provide technical assistance on the order of what we were talking about, the Bowie State program. So we'll see. God willing, that passes. And then, working like with consultants like you who know how this process works, because it is so complicated. Or again, we're going to all our resources partners that it's paid for with taxpayer dollars to figure out and navigate the process. And then establishing relationships with the business opportunity specialists at our district offices who are aware of what's in the pipeline and who right now we're getting to partner more with the watchtowers that I refer to in my office. So the business opportunity specialists are part of the field team. The procurement center representatives are part of our team and government contracting. They're the ones who have the ability to escalate up any kind of protest around a contract within the federal agency. So we want to make sure there's that constant conversation between our business specialists and our procurement center representatives, so they know how to match the opportunities that they're seeing with the firms that are on the ground.
That makes perfect.
And then you've got the Office of Small Business utilization at each of the federal agencies.
Oh, right. Yeah. The people that are responsible for that.
Right. And so in my office, we score how each of the agencies perform. And so the agencies are right now figuring out, and since the president said he wants to increase small disadvantaged business, basically minority contracting, to 15%, right now we have a goal of getting to 11% this year. So that means billions more dollars that will be
percentage, just to make sure people understand. When you talk about government spending, anytime you move a percentage point, you are talking about a lot of money. It's because sometimes we think, oh, we've gone to 10 to 11, but you said 15 is the goal, and you're talking about 11 in math. And math we get taught in public school, that didn't seem like you were really close, but moving from 10 to 11, we're talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars being flushed into or being pushed into the economy. If not billions, now I think about it.
Yeah. About 2.53 billion we're talking about going to more minority-owned businesses.
When she says that they've made progress at 1%, make sure you understand what that really means in real life. That's $2.5 billion of opportunity that was not available to the people it will be available to. I mean, so because I talk to your people, I ain't trying to have no problems with your people. They told me you got a hard stop, so I'm gonna try to honor that real quick. But I want to give you one opportunity to tell us, what can we do to help? A lot of times it's great that you all are doing this, but again, government is all of us. This shouldn't just be on your shoulders as an employee. What can we do as a community, as citizens, to really help you all push this forward?
I think just what you're doing right now about getting the word out, so we break down the barriers to contracting, and like you said, most of it is very emotional. It plays with your mind, and so making sure that people are aware, people like you that have this platform to communicate with the community, to say now's the time. The president is very committed. He's putting the resources. Now's the time to get into the game and to leverage all these incredible resources that we have in the federal government. And I think, I'd love to be able to, so Congressman Mfume is really passionate about this issue. And so we'd love to come to Baltimore and sit down with his team, with you and others as we develop our strategies. Right now, I'm working very closely with defense because that's where the bulk of the money is. And there's a really talented team there. And we're trying to figure out what's our really calibrated strategy so that ultimately not Navy, Army, Air Force, you've got right there about $300 billion. How do we now make sure that people are aware of these opportunities from accounting to legal to cybersecurity? All those opportunities are there. So let's continue this conversation, because I've really enjoyed it, and you are such an expert on the issue, but you know how to make it really accessible, and I think that's where your support will be pivotal to our team and to my office.
And don't threaten me with a good time. You talk about coming to Baltimore to talk about business stuff. You tell me the date, I'll set up a roundtable for you. We get it popping.
Let's do it. Let's plan it. I think my team has been listening in. So Tiffany Townsend, Catherine Branch, who was Valerie Jarrett's assistant for 28 years. She joined our team. We'll make sure that happens in the near future. And I do want to give a shout out to Mr. Donnie Glover, who had me previously on his show, who's wonderful. And thank you to him for introducing us. And also Mr. Ron Busby, who connected me with Mr. Glover and you and your team.
Love Ron. Actually, so because I know you got to go, because you gave me a great segue, because I wanted to talk about one of the things that Ron has really been big on is business opportunities for entrepreneurs through acquisition and merger. And when I've been talking to clients about this, they're like, why would I want somebody else's problem? I'm like, oh my God, you're missing an opportunity. Especially for places or organizations that have a high capital increase or high capital requirement. Where if you buy them, guess what? They're looking to get out, especially if they've been managed poorly. They're looking to get out, and you can do it with a little smaller. You know what? I'm sorry, you had to go because I was about to get started again. I'm
Ron was an 8A business owner, very successful, and I got to tell you, he is out there fighting every day
all the time.
Black and minority-owned businesses. A lot of this we were able to do because he pushed so hard, especially around the issue of category management. So I'd love to, when we do that round table, and have him join as well, because I think we put all our heads together and a lot of great things can come of it.
Cool. So you gotta go.
I know, me with the administrator now, so I gotta go.
Oh yeah. So, big shout out to Administrator Guzman. Done a phenomenal job and has really been focused on small business, not with an emphasis toward micro enterprises. And that's a lot of the way that people in the Black community transition into entrepreneurship. So So again, I want no smoke.
I see a comment here from Miss Lisa Riley about need for government contract experience.
Oh, I'm gonna talk.
We do have a mentor protege program. I'm glad she mentioned that. And we have a great mentorship program. We have a great team there working extremely hard to create partnerships. I think we're close to something like 2,000 now. So please do look that up as well on our website, and then connect with one of the local offices. All right.
So you can go ahead, because I got what, like another 10 no 5. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you gotta go. You didn't get me in trouble.
I better go now.
You gotta go. You're not getting me in trouble. I will talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to have been able to share this time with you, Bibi. And thank you so much.
Likewise. God bless, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.
Looking forward to it. All right. Bye. All right. So wow, that was a little bit, that was a lot. One of the things that as she was getting off, she was mentioning about, and Lisa was mentioning about getting a mentor. One of the things that you can do is, especially somebody like Ron Busby at the U.S. Black Chamber, Ron will always put you on. He will always tell you who's in your community or who's in your state that'll be able to give you some information about the business model or about getting your contracting and stuff done. Actually, good news, on Friday, we're going to have Sharif Small come through of SJS Financial Firm. And he says, oh, wow. I did not know that. My God, Ron. So, he's Ron Busby is a great resource. I did not know he lost his son. Oh, wow. My prayers for him and his family, man. He is a good dude. He is a really good dude. And his commitment to Black businesses, and not just commitment, but like technical expertise. Because, you got some people who mean well, but sometimes they lead you down the wrong road. That's not Ron. And so I'm actually, he was one of the people. I said something about how I said I'm hard. He said I was talking about working hard. And he was like, and he said, could have been the other. I said, it could have been the other way. It's better than the alternative. And he looked at me, he said, brother, why do you think hard work should be the goal? We should work hard so that we don't have to. I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. So again, my prayers to his family on his loss, but organizations like the U.S. Black Chamber, and places like that, SCORE, and SBDC, this organization called PTAC. This is a process, and that's what is really important to remember. You don't just jump into federal contracting or these opportunities. You need to scale. It's kind of like you before you try to get married, you got to date a little bit. You need to have some experience. Now, some of you all don't, and magic, and that might be nice, but for the majority of us, this is a rough road to hoe. And I really appreciate the fact that, she was aligned with this idea that growing a business, especially when you're trying to transition to federal contracting, is really about the time to scale. This is federal contracting is not a startup activity. That's it. If you hear about people who did it, recognize that they may have just got their paperwork good, but there's a lot of history that has gone in, because you are asking the government to risk their brand on you. So the cool part is we got Sharif Small coming in on Friday, 10 a.m. to talk about getting your books together and get everything prepared so that you can be in a position to do some federal contracting and stuff. Woo! Tomorrow, we're going to talk to Tamika Givens. We're going to talk about all things real estate and how to prepare yourself for the upcoming real estate market, because I got some theories about what's about to happen, and I'm going to be honest, you're not going to like them unless you're on the right side of the investment paradigm. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, big prayers to Ron Busby. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it has again been an amazing opportunity. Thank you for the time and privilege of being here. Again, shout out to super producer Crazy Horse Morgan, and big shout out to the silent producer Donnie Glover, making sure that everything is everything on the BlackUSA.News Morning Show. All right, you got. Oh yeah. Oh wow, Carla Nelson Chambers is going to be hosting Sister Biz tonight. Make sure you get on that. Have a great one.